This is a short video, one of two, on getting started with pandas. We won't cover everything that we intend to discuss in our two sessions on pandas, but we will get started so that you can have a nice smooth beginning and to get you started exploring a little bit if you're really interested in learning more about the module. Certainly, if you really do want to master pandas, which in some ways is a language of its own, you'll need to spend a great deal of time studying it on your own. Let's begin by launching a tool that I'd like to use to work with pandas the most effectively. It's called Jupyter Notebook. And for Jupyter Notebook, we are going to need to use either Anaconda, where we have Jupyter Notebook installed, or you would need to install it separately yourself. These instructions are for those of you that have installed Anaconda. If you had to install Anaconda separately, or had to install Jupyter Notebook separately, you'll want to get in touch with me. In Windows, you're going to do a search for Anaconda Navigator, and you'll see an icon that includes a green circle. You'll want to click that, and you'll find that it takes a few moments to load. Once it does load, you'll look for the Jupyter Notebook panel, one of several panels, and click Launch. I think the button's called Launch. On the Mac, you're just going to search for Terminal, and at the prompt, type Jupyter Notebook. If for whatever reason this doesn't work for you, those of you on Mac, you may want to go ahead and search for Anaconda Navigator. That's probably what I should do too. When I do a search, I see Anaconda Navigator. I think I will actually change my mind here. Oh, I can't somehow open it for whatever reason. It might be because I've got different, I don't know why. Well, anyway, you should try it, one or the other. The way I want to do it is by launching a terminal prompt and then typing Jupyter Notebook. So whether you use the Anaconda Navigator approach or Jupyter Notebook approach, the result should be that your browser, your default browser, will open up a new tab and show you this type of display. This is the Jupyter Notebook file navigator. It begins with allowing you to see your file system, usually from the home directory. It depends on from where you launch Jupyter Notebook. If you launched from Anaconda Navigator, you should be at your home directory here, and you'll see files that you recognize from your home directory or folders like desktop, downloads, etc. If you happen to launch Jupyter Notebook from a different directory, then you may not see your home directory. You'll see that directory listed. It's best to start with your home directory. It just gives you the most flexibility in terms of where you can navigate. The thing is that every link here is a link to a folder on your file system. So this is sort of like an alternative view of your file system, similar to your operating system's windows, that show the different folders in a graphic form, but it's web-based. So the next thing to do is to go find the notebooks that I've prepared for us to use with pandas. Now I want to emphasize that you're not required to use Jupyter Notebook. If you prefer, you can use PyCharm. PyCharm has the same in-class exercises as both PyCharm both PY files and Jupyter Notebooks, and actually that's always been true. Just look in the PyCharm for the let's take a look here. Well, I got my tongue tied here. When you look at it, your folder structure, if we go to session 8 here, you'll see that besides in-class exercises, there's something called Notebooks in-class warm-up. This is where the notebooks are, and this is where we're going to look for them. But we'll find that the in-class exercises cover the same material, and that's actually always been true. Going back to Jupyter Notebook, I'm going to go navigate to where I stored my Python data folder for this course. I'm going to go to downloads where I left it, and Python Data APY. That's what I named it just to differentiate it from my intro course. Yours is probably just called Python Data. And then I'm going to go over to session 8 where we've got our notebooks. And here we have in-class exercises and notebooks in-class warm-up. And we've got a special notebook for homework. Now, you are required to use Notebook for the homework because I don't have the homework represented in another form, so you are going to need to do this eventually. I do want to emphasize that, and here I am clicking through, and here you can see the breadcrumb trail showing the location of this file from my home directory. So you can click back and up down your tree by clicking on either the breadcrumb trail links, or folders. I can go back to Notebooks in Class Warm-Up, or sorry, Session 8 folder, and go to Notebooks in Class Warm-Up, and then I'm going to go to In-Class Exercises. And once I click on an IPYMB file, and just to elucidate here, the IPYMB file is a file that represents a Jupyter Notebook. It would be called JNB, I think, but the original name for Jupyter Notebook was IPython Notebook. So that's why we have an IPYMB extension for these files. They're kind of stuck with that now. The IPYMB file is actually a JSON file that describes what we see in the notebook, which is a combination of text and these cells. And we'll discuss the notebook in just a moment. So I, again, want to emphasize that it is possible to work within, I want to emphasize too, that when we work within pandas, we're not required to use Notebook. In fact, when we do our first exercise, I'm going to show you right here how we can execute these scripts in PyCharm. And in fact, you're going to want to eventually be working from PyCharm. Jupyter Notebook is a great tool, but it's not really useful, or I don't think it's very effective when you're writing longer programs. So you should definitely not feel that Jupyter Notebook is going to be your IDE. That is, something like PyCharm, which manages your files and allows you to write scripts and then execute them. You should not be using Jupyter Notebook for this purpose. You should be using PyCharm to write your longer programs. However, Notebook does have certain advantages in that we can visualize our data frames much more easily. And when we get to data visualization, that is charts like line charts and bar charts, they're going to be able to be visualized right here in the browser. So that's a pretty great advantage when we're learning. Now, just a couple of notes on Notebook itself before we get into pandas. I want to give you the basic dynamics of working with Notebook so that we understand what's going on. And also a special quirk with Notebook. It's not actually a quirk, it's more of a feature, but it may seem a little quirky just based on what we're seeing here and what our intuition may tell us. Notebook is similar to the interactive prompt in that it will remember things that you've done. Here I'm going ahead and typing in what we call a cell within the notebook. The notebook can have multiple cells. I've prepared this with lots and lots of starter code similar to the exercises. And here I'm just typing in some Python code that I like, and now I'm going to execute it. Now executing it is most easiest done using Control-Enter or Shift-Enter, which is not working for me right now. Shift-Enter, or I guess on the Mac it's Command-Enter, and on the PC it's Control-Enter, or you can use Shift-Enter. The difference is that Shift-Enter will take you to the next cell, I think, and Control-Enter will not, or Command-Enter. So I recommend the latter, Command-Enter. Another thing you can do if you need to is you can select the cell and click Run, Or you can go to cell and say run cells. Look, they even show the keyboard shortcut here. And there's some other options as well. You can run all cells, run all below these cells, etc. You have lots of options there. But I emphasize the keyboard shortcut just because it's really, really convenient to be able to just say, Command Enter, Control Enter, and execute your cell. And you can go ahead and change it and re-execute it again. So it becomes like a little scratch pad for doing work, similar to the Python interactive prompt, but a lot better because we have it all here and we can come back to this cell at any time, and then we can also go to other cells and do things as well. Here's the thing though. Okay, and one other little quirk, something to keep in mind. The last thing that we type in a cell will be the value that is shown. So if I say C times 2 at the end, I see the result of all these calculations, including C times 2. Or if I